that the nation's external earnings, crude oil accounts for about the oil and gas account for about 75%. So you can see that this is the mainstay of the Nigerian nation, at least from economic perspective. So when you talk about oil forecasting, generally you are referring to the projections that is done in the oil sector or the oil industry by the players. And as they do so, they are trying to read the trends. They are trying to know how to weigh in and maximize the profit. You have, a group of foreign investors that you call IOCs. They are the ones majorly involved in this. Of course, the nation's major player, which is the NNPC Limited, is there on behalf of the country, working and collaborating with the IOCs in trying to get the best deal for the country. And it's exactly also why you have the Organization of Oil Producing Countries, OPEC, which tries to stabilize the oil market so that fluctuations do not lead to volatility in the industry, to the point that oil exporting countries do not operate at avoidable losses. So that's the kind of overview you find in an attempt to explain what the oil forecast is. And let me also add that in all manner of business, forecast is involved, and the oil industry is not an exception. You look at it, that is a commodity which is internationally traded, and the traders in it may not even need to see or touch oil itself. They just follow the trend and buy and sell without necessarily having to physically lift the oil from any country. You find that in a forex trade. Those who follow forex trade don't necessarily have to see the currencies. They just follow the trend and trade on the platforms. And if they understand the forecasts very well, they minimize their losses and maximize their possible gains. The same thing extends to all commodities, gold, of late. Even food items are also joining the what you may call international exchanges, where they are also traded, following the same process and patterns. So, but more importantly, we need to understand the OICs, very, very important, because these are the international players who come to the party trying to take on whatever Nigeria has to offer as crude, and they buy in advance. And again, that this is a form of forecast. If you remember that during the Buhari administration, a lot of OICs were involved in purchasing Nigerian crude in advance. That means future oil that is yet to be mined, drilled, they are already purchased. And NNPC has committed itself to the tune of $3 point something billion in that regard.
Yeah.
and they want to do additional 2 billion crude backed deal again. You know, those
Well,
who are working with NNPC in that manner are involved in forecasts of some sort.
well, we talking about the additional $2.2 billion deal. Can we let us can you enlighten us on this particular $2 billion deal?
Well, you see,
What exactly is NNPC trying to do with this loan? Who is the lender in this situation? How much is being exchanged, and for what amount of barrels of oil? I mean, if we get this fact, it will be able to justify the actions that the NNPC is trying
that's
to.
uh, that's a big question there. Um, two, three things you identified there, very germane, quite fundamental. This money, who is bringing it? Very important question. NNPC hasn't disclosed, but it's going to come the same way the other $3.2 billion came, and usually and expectedly should be coming from the same OICs, the international oil corporations. They are the ones specifically. Once you are talking about the crude-backed loans, it is those who would want your crude that will have to give such loans. And that is where the international oil corporations come in, because they they are the major marketers, major dealers in oil of different countries. Nigeria's crude, Brent crude inclusive. And I already told us that during the Buhari administration, one of the problems that his government led us into was these crude-backed loans. And that's why I said that even before now, that NNPC had already committed itself or taken crude-backed loans to the tune of $3.2 billion. So the 2 billion coming through the same process is not new, it's just to add to what they have already done. And what is NNPC going to deploy this money to? Their operations, of course. And the ongoing operations of NNPC, you should know that NNPC is running Nigerian crude almost as a monopoly. And they are in charge of imports of refined fuel and in charge of export of the crude solely. Nobody is doing that with them. So what they now do, just 1 minute, excuse me, what they now do is to go into what you call joint venture operations. These joint ventures is still with the IOCs. It's still with them. But here, there is even a greater commitment. These people are not just coming to purchase our crude and go away. They go into joint business with NNPC. And by going into joint business, joint venture operations means that to the degree of their commitment, they are joint owners of Nigerian oil, limited to the extent of their involvement. If a particular engagement with OICs on joint ventures agreement is maybe 60 to 40, 60 in favor of NNPC and 40 in favor of the joint partners. What
Yes.
that means is that that a particular oil business or deal, maybe maybe limited to some oil wells, drilling and exporting and all that. It means that the entire business, 40% of it is owned by the joint partners. And the NNPC and Nigeria own 60%. So you can see that this is also going on. And it's going on behalf of the country. Because if you remember, a year ago, the former president, Muhammad Buhari, signed into law the Petroleum Industry Act. And the Petroleum Industry Act makes NNPC a limited liability company. And it means that it's run essentially as a business. In that manner, government interference and influence is removed, or at least reduced to the barest minimum, even though the NNPC is still 100% owned by Nigerians, because it's yet to be quoted on the stock exchange. So it's still owned by Nigerians. So if you go to CAC now, the directors of NNPC Limited would be the Minister of Finance, maybe Minister of National Planning, maybe people like that. They may not be the Group Managing Director of NNPC. They may not be more than 4 or 5 of them. What that means is that Nigeria is still owning the NNPC, even though it retains the 100% ownership. Control and operations is no longer run under direct supervision of a government, even though the president of Nigeria, another huge anomaly, calls himself the Minister of Petroleum.
It still begs the question, from what you are saying, according to the Petroleum Industry Act, the interference of government has been reduced to the barest minimum, right? It's also the Nigerian people, since the deal was announced, $2 billion oil deal, arguments have emerged from social media. People are saying, what is the link for? What exactly does the oil for cash deal for oil for cash deal mean? What arguments do the Nigerian people, do they have the rights to actually ask these questions to NNPC? Because they're saying, what arguments have the NNPC brought forward to support this action? Does NNPC owe Nigerians any explanation as to what they want to do with the money?
I just told you that NNPC is a limited liability company, and the shareholders are Nigerians. The shareholders are Nigerians, because the NNPC Limited is not yet quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. What I mean is that as a limited liability company, the shareholders are the owners of the company. And the shareholders are mentioned the Minister of Finance, maybe 1 or 2 other ministers, and the Group Managing Director of NNPC. They are not there on their own accord. They are representatives of Nigeria and Nigerians. So if the shareholders are Nigerians, it means that those people whose names appear on the CAC from what now? I can't remember the firm, where you have the directors and shareholders. It simply means that they are there holding those shares in trust. And that is why their names may not really reflect there. It will be the office they hold. You just see Minister of Finance, Group Managing Director of NNPC, because the occupiers of those offices could change any moment. So, but the offices will remain permanent. They'll be there. So, and these are offices created for administrative convenience, for good governance, and all that. And the offices created on behalf of Nigerians by the president, who they elected to be their chief executive. So Nigerians reserve every right to ask questions. They must know what is going on in the industry, what they are doing with their money. Unfortunately, till date, the NNPC and these operations, opaque. They are very opaque. The opacity is what the problems are. Nobody can tell, for example, the quantity of oil that is drilled and exported every day. How many barrels? You can't really tell. It's all a matter of speculation and all that. Because I told you that NNPC is more or less a monopoly. As a monopoly, they do as they like. In fact, NNPC is carrying on both as an operator and as a regulator unto itself. So, and that is where the problems are, because they are the ones in charge of import and export, and they will declare what they exported, what they imported. No checks and balances. There is no means. You and I can never tell precisely the number of barrels of crude that leave our shores. If you don't know the number of barrels of crude that leave our shores, how can you know how much they sold? How can you calculate the landing cost? There is no accountability. The place is totally opaque. And then you ask yourself, Mel Kiari, the group managing director of NNPC, has been there for upward of perhaps 5 years. The question is, what the hell is he doing there? So if you want to reform a place, you start with the leadership. But the Tinubu presidency retained Melekiari in spite of the opacity that has occurred in the industry. So much corruption. For example, we had from the office of the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, that between 400 and 500,000 barrels of crude is stolen every day. And how is that done? If you understand how crude lifting is done, you will observe that some of the mother vessels are so huge that it may take as long as 2 weeks to fill up, 2 whole weeks. And again, Nigerian Navy is responsible for what you may call our maritime security. They are the chief, they are the ones, there may be other small players around, but it's the Navy. And you can't enter the nation's, no vessel can enter Nigerian waters without approval. Otherwise, it will be sunk. And we have seen where Navy even took steps to arrest some of these vessels, and the orders came from where nobody knows to have those vessels released. Who gave the orders? So whoever gave the order or orders for the vessels to be released, vessels seized by the Navy because of bunkering, because of a violation of our waters and continental shelf, and all that came that such vessels should be released. Those people should be responsible for the crude oil theft. They know what they are doing. So you can see that the issue of crude oil theft is the one that really runs pretty deep. You don't know who they are settling. You don't know the arrangement. We just talked about oil forecasts and OICs buying oil in advance and giving money, paying for future crude that will be drilled in Nigeria. Future crude. That's the simple truth.
That's the problem. It's like we are leveraging our future for short-term goals. Again, the NNPC, you mentioned Mela Kiari, the NNPC general manager. He said that the cash raised from the NNPC from this deal will be used for all of the NNPC's activities, including supporting production growth. But we already know that Nigeria is the largest producer of oil in Africa, crude oil in Africa. Again, I ask, do you think that there's still a wide gap between oil production and petroleum resources available to the consumers in Nigeria. Because we hear things about fuel scarcity, crude scarcity, and all of that. Petroleum products is being sold at exorbitant prices. Meanwhile, every day, oil is being stolen from the shores of Nigeria. And these are the things. I
Yeah,
mean, Mela carries comments about what this money will be used. I just want to say that.
well, I am not persuaded that Mele Kyari is being altruistic enough. Personally, I'm not persuaded. I don't believe in what he is saying. He has been there for upward of 5 years, and he knows what is going on. And so much sleaze, so much corruption, oil theft, and everything. What has Mele Kyari done to really inject integrity into the process, transparency, so that Nigerians can know how much is exported and how much is imported and stuff like that. He met it in that opacity, and he has left it like that. So what is it really talking about? Now, let me mention one more thing here as a way of answering that question more clearly. You know, Nigeria has 3 major refineries,
Yes.
if not 4. You have one in Port Harcourt, in Warri, you have here in Kaduna, and for the past 1 decade, these 3 refineries have not been able to refine a gallon of fuel. And trillions have gone into what we call total turnaround maintenance to make sure that these refineries start working, because they were working before. They have a combined capacity of up to 460,000 barrels a day, refining capacity. That should be, when refined, that will give us over 1 million liters of fuel every day. That should be enough to take care of our local consumption. And yet, for a decade, for 1 whole decade, they have not been able to refine a gallon of crude oil to give us even a liter of fuel. They have not been able to do that. Why? Corruption. There is, apart from corruption, political will. There is something about the oil sector that can't really meet the eyes. Ask yourself, how come every president wants to be the Minister of Petroleum? Why? Why are they so concerned about being the Minister of Petroleum? There is something they are covering up. There is something they don't want to be done any other way. Obasanjo started the nonsense and Buhari continued. I recall the day Buhari swore in his ministers. He said, and seated before you here is the Honorable Minister of Petroleum, referring to himself. People laughed, but actually we ought to be crying if we really understand the implications of these things. The mainstay of Nigerian economy is the oil. Let me give you an insight into what you may consider the implications of the way and manner we have run the oil sector. Since our export earnings are up to close to 75% crude dependent, what that means is that your income, your foreign exchange earnings will be tied to that extent also. That is one major level of the problem. But that is not even what I want to draw your attention to. Do you also know that when you have sold your crude in advance to take a loan, NNPC is claiming that Nigeria and Nigerians owe the NNPC, and not even the NNPC, owing Nigeria and Nigerians now. In fact, there are years that the NNPC didn't return 1 naira to the Nigerian government. 1 kobo was not returned to the Nigerian government. Now, if you have come to that level and you have now been hit by economic crisis, and this economic crisis has to do with your inability to earn more dollars, it means that even the crude you are exporting, only a part of it will come to you as money, because you have already sold a significant percentage in advance.
That
is why where we are. You know, Nigerians need to understand this. The Buhari sold crude oil in advance before leaving. And then NNPC wants to sell more by taking $2 billion loan that will be crude.
Yeah,
when you say
these
crude,
are the questions that are being raised. That again, the president of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina, he raised the question of imbalance in the whole thing with the payments and why it's detrimental to the Nigerian people. He said the deal is uneven, with lenders having the upper hand and dictating the terms regarding the pricing of Nigeria's assets. What's your take on that? Because we are giving out these oil barrels, the crude oil. We should dictate and say this is what we want to sell our barrel, sell our oil for. But in this situation, the lenders have the upper hand in all of these situations. What's your take on that, Dr. Law?
That's precisely the point I was trying to make.
Okay,
if they pay you in advance, you can no longer dictate how they sell their own crude, because they will take a percentage of your daily production.
Yes.
Right? Because they are paying, they are paying for the barrels, and they paid for the barrels in advance. So if they bought from you when crude was $50, right? $50,000 per barrel, and now it is $100 per barrel. You can no longer dictate you can't say that the balance belongs to you, because they too made an investment and they hope to make something. That you talked about forecast and speculations, right? It's part of it. They hope that the price of crude will rise tomorrow when they will start selling. That is why Dangote is crying that the OICs are not selling to him. The OICs are there to make money. They will sell to him if he's ready to buy at the prevailing international market price. But Dangote would want to be given some concession that he's a Nigerian and this is something he's doing for Nigerians. And these guys are not Nigerians. That is the tragedy. So that is the point that Adesina was making, that when you mortgage your major assets, those who have taken over these assets will now dictate what your national life will be. That is where we have gotten to. They will dictate. And you cannot determine for somebody who, Piper syndrome, they have already paid you.
Yeah.
If I hire your car, for example, you can't tell me, how to use the car. You can't. I have hired you, I've paid you. So for the period that I have paid you to use your car, the car belongs to me. That is how these things work. After that, the ownership will revert to you. So when you mortgage, within the period of mortgage, ownership and control is actually going to the mortgage institutions.
Again, I asked Dr. Law, in a situation like this, with the sort of deal, the prepayments and selling crude in advance, I want to ask you, what are the short-term and long-term implications of a deal like this? Because certainly there are implications for this. What are the short? Can you explain to us what the short-term and long implications of this deal is? Let us know.
Well, you see, the only way Nigeria can earn enough from oil as of today. If you factor in the crude-backed loans that will not take away substantial amount of crude we drill and export per day, is to increase our production. You see, our OPEC quota is between 1.8 million and 2 million barrels a day. But officially, Nigeria is exporting about 1.5, between 1.4 and 1.6 million. So you have a staggering balance of 400 to 500,000 barrels that Nigeria has to do something about to recover. Much of it is going into oil theft. What will it take? Who are those that Nigeria is servicing by allowing to be taken our crude? And we call it oil theft. I don't think it's oil theft. I believe that it's unofficial sales of Nigerian crude. They know those. They know those who qualify in that category. I don't know who they are, but then there must be a reason for it. I believe they have taken enough. And Tinubu should tell them so. And cancel all such concessions.
Again, the question of
all such concessions so that Nigeria will be able to increase its daily production capacity from 1.5 to 2 million. We need to exhaust our entire OPEC quota. And let me even tell you see, I have recommended somewhere that if Nigeria can hit 3,000 barrels a day production capacity, and OPEC does not want us to export that much, we exit OPEC. We are in a state of crisis. We will not be the first country to exit OPEC. Angola, I think, left OPEC one time. And Nigeria, based on national interest and national economic crisis and emergency, can exit OPEC. But you cannot exit OPEC now because there's no reason for it. You cannot even exhaust the quota they gave you. So for what reason are you leaving? You can leave only if you cannot be allowed to export more. And as we speak, we can't export more because the unofficial sales of crude oil, which you call crude oil theft, is taking up to 500,000 barrels of.
Who should be held accountable for theft? And we speak about every day, Nigeria, crude oil theft, crude oil unofficial sales. Which we should have people that we can hold responsible for thefts and some of these situations. Who should the Nigerian people hold accountable in situations like this?
You see, this is a presidential democracy. And in a presidential democracy, the executive arm is just the president. Every other person is his appointee. Himself is the sole appointer. Even the vice president can't say anything. The vice president can't stop the president. He can only advise him because the vice president, like the deputy governor, is only a spare tire. You can do the much assigned to you by the president. So in a presidential democracy, it is one man that is the chief executive of the country, and that is the president. And that is His Excellency, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as of today. So it is him. He knows what is going on. This unofficial sales, I believe, I've given you a reason why I believe it's a matter of unofficial sales. Yes, some thefts may be going on because of oil bunkering by small thieves you find in the Niger Delta who are trying to do some illegal refining, and they do a bit of that, but that is not what Tom Polo discovered. Tom Polo was able to show us, on the mother pipe that was taking the crude from Nigeria to some designated point. Tom Polo showed us in a video of ancillary pipes that were attached to the modern, what do you call it now? Pipes, right? All the pipes, some people, who are the people drilling? Who are the people drilling from the such unofficial attached pipes that take crude away from the mother pipe? So they know, and I already told you that a vessel can't enter Nigerian waters unless it is cleared. Yes, and I have also told you that we have records of the fact that vessels arrested by the Nigerian Navy were released. The question is, by who? Who authorized the release of the vessels? The people that were arrested in this illegal oil theft and bunkering, most of them are foreign nationals. How many of them have been tried and convicted according to Nigerian law? Theft is theft. It doesn't matter what you thieved. Theft is theft. You stole oil, you'll be prosecuted according to Nigerian laws and sent to prison. That hasn't happened. If it has, I'm not aware. So something is going on. And that's going on. The president of Nigeria is aware. He is aware. And I believe he should be aware because he is the Minister of Petroleum. So the whole buck stops on his table. The group managing director of NNPC Limited reports to Tinubu directly. It doesn't even report to the Minister of State. Remember when Kachuku was around and he was having this kind of issues with, I don't know whether it was the group managing director at that time, either Baro or somebody like that, and he had to report the group managing director to President Buhari. Nothing came out of it. That was one of the reasons Kachuku simply was no longer interested in continuing because it was too humiliating.
Dr. Mefor, these are big questions you've raised. Certainly questions that need to be answered by who certainly it has to be answered by definitely the president and those in charge, right? Again, I ask, in the last year, 2023, NNPC did not publish its full year report. In 2024, the NNPC has not published the first quarter report. Some of these things happening, is the NNPC mandated? Is it mandatory for the NNPC to publish this report? With the NNPC being a limited liability company, even though it's not been okayed yet, but are they obligated to publish reports to the public? Because questions from every corner, and we just want to know what should be obtainable.
NNPC is statutorily obligated to publish its reports. And it has to be an annual event. And once a report is published, it becomes a public document. Every public document can be accessed by anybody. So it's not a secret document. But for me, even their refusal to publish their annual reports as stipulated by law is a red signal, which I believe the president needs to look into, assuming he is really worried about what is going on in the sector. If it's not part of what they are doing, if what they are doing does not meet his approval, he should institute international forensic audit into the affairs of the NNPC in the last 2 decades. We need to know what has happened in that sector in the last 2 decades. We need to know who owes who. And you will never know based on the NNPC report, because their report, if they have been operating under opacity and all that, there will not be full disclosure of their activities in their reports. It will be doctored, obviously. Because if they are transparent They don't even need to wait to write their reports. They should every month tell Nigerians what they exported and what they brought in. They should be able to do that. But instead, they are enjoying the monopoly. Haven't you noticed a trend that NNPC is buying filling stations all over the country? Have you not seen that? What is their business with petroleum retailing? If not to ensure that they take over the entire sector without any person playing any key role. That's why I said that they are both operators and regulators unto themselves. This is an aberration. It doesn't happen. You cannot be an operator and a regulator. It's like MTN regulating itself. MTN,
Yes.
Airtel regulating themselves. That is what the NNPC is doing. It's not the contemplation of the law. The law does not give them the right to do that. But that is what they are doing. Because if they are not regulating themselves, they will not be in charge of both export and import. And they are also at the same time the people to tell you what they exported and imported. So where are the checks and balances? That's the question I'm asking. So you discover that you need to overhaul the entire place. I believe that Melekiari, I don't know him in person. I don't have anything against him as a person, but I believe that he has overstayed his welcome. He should leave so that the place can breathe. Since we have moved NNPC from NNPC to NNPC Limited, Melekiari supervised that. He has done enough. Can somebody who understands how a company can be run, be allowed to come in? Somebody who can, bring in some fresh air into what is going on and open up the place so that there will be, you see, what NNPC is doing, I've told you is tainted in opacity. That doesn't mean that they are not doing the right thing. But you and I don't know what they are doing. So how do we know it is the right thing they are doing?
Yes, certainly, like you said, we need to have checks and balances.
We need to rejig the entire oil sector, beginning with the leadership of the NNPC. Some of them have been changed and fresh appointments put there. But if you don't remove the main man who is in charge of the entire place, you haven't done any leadership overhaul. This is very important. And I also think that NNPC Limited should become NNPC PLC so that it will be quoted in the stock exchange. Nigerians who want can buy shares. That way you open up the place. Nigeria is not the only oil producing country. We claim that we are the biggest oil producing country in Africa. But we also don't want to tell the world that we are the only oil producing country that does not own a refinery, a functional refinery. No oil, not one anywhere in the world. A place like Singapore has more than 10 to 20 refineries. They don't have crude oil. They come take oil from Nigeria and refine in their place and send back to us. You will be surprised that in such countries, those refineries are owned by the same people.
The Dangote refinery is...
It's true. It's a fact. And this is why you need to really open up the sector so that you know who is doing what. If you go to the boards of all these multinationals, you will see the members of their boards, some of them are former regulators of the same sector. So if you are a regulator in a sector and you leave the office, you become a board member of a place you once regulated. What manner of regulation did you carry out when you were in office?
Thank you very much.
We need to the issue of corruption has eaten too deep into our system, and we need President Tinubu to bare his fangs and clean the mess. He has become an audience table.
Of course, Dr. Mefor, we certainly President Bola Tinubu.
Yes, so it requires what you call a presidential political will.
Yeah, definitely. The sector needs a cleanup. We need to have checks and balances, like you rightly pointed out. But again, you mentioned the issue of other petroleum exporting countries having refineries, right? With Dangote refinery coming into play, do you think that there's going to be any difference? Is the refinery actually, with projections, is the refinery actually going to change anything for Nigeria?
How can it change anything when Dangote is compelled to buy his crude from the US? The crude that is produced in his own backyard, he cannot access because of the loans that we have taken from the OICs, and the OICs are insisting on selling at the rate that they fix, which Dangote may not find competitive because he too is in business. If you refine and your unit cost is above what the NNPC is importing at, you will be running at a loss, because certainly you'll be selling to the what we call marketers, the oil marketers in Nigeria, at a higher price than what they are taking from the NNPC depots. So the only way what NNPC, Dangote is doing via his refinery would make a difference to the life of the ordinary Nigerian is if NNPC can directly supply crude to Dangote. If you don't supply him crude, you can't tell him anything. And he can't get crude from NNPC. If he gets, is grossly inadequate what he gets from them. This ought not to be if we didn't take so much loan using crude to back such a loans up. You took the loan and you are giving a future crude as the mortgage. That means whatever you produce every day, your creditors will take their own, then you sell the balance. That's where we are. So it's not favorable to Dangote, and understandably so, because there is no way he will buy from the international market and sell at a loss. But if we were in a position to stop the oil theft or unofficial sales, as I prefer to put it, that which you recover will be going to Dangote 500,000 barrels of crude every day, guaranteed to Dangote, will be enough for him, because his total installed capacity, I think, is about 650,000. So, that is the total installed capacity. I don't think he has to be going 100% all the time. I don't believe so. So if you guarantee 500,000 barrels a day to Dangote, it's sufficient. And you can make a deal. He can take part of the crude and give you fuel. You don't even need to pay him money. But the tragedy is that we don't even have crude to give him. That's the problem here. And that is why he was shouting that the OICs are not selling to him. No, he shouldn't be talking about OICs. He should attack the source of the problem. It is NNPC. They are the ones that mortgage that oil. That's the truth. So why attack a businessman that is insisting on selling at a particular price? There is nothing that will make the OICs not want to sell to Dangote if he's ready to pay the right price. Do you see where the problem is? And if you were a businessman too, you will behave in the same manner the OICs are behaving. That's the truth. Because in a capitalist environment, though the investors are there to make money, they don't care. It's not a moral game. It's money. Well, that's the meaning of investment. Because when they gave you the loan, supposing crude crashed to something like 10,000, do you understand what I'm saying? If it dropped so much, so to something like $10 per barrel, but you took the loan at about $80 per barrel, who will pay the balance? The person that will bear the loss is the OIC. Do you see where the problem is? So why is it that the crude is appreciating in price? You don't want him to enjoy the margin that his patience has rewarded him with. You would have allowed him to take the hit alone, the hit of the loss, all by himself, all alone. But where he is gaining, you are complaining. So we need to rally around and see how NNPC must be able to help Dangote in order to for Dangote refinery to help Nigeria. You know why I keep saying this? Why I keep saying this is this. You cannot force Dangote to fix his price in any way. In fact, even if he buys his crude directly from NNPC, right? Even if he buys directly from NNPC, you still cannot force Dangote to fix the price. You can only negotiate with him.
Of course.
I know that Nigeria made about 20% investment in Dangote refinery. It's something that can help us to sit, have somebody on the board and all that. Dangote is also a patriot. But again, he took bank loans and all that. And he has to pay these things back. Do you understand that? I believe he even took part. I'm not sure he has fully paid what he took from the Central Bank of Nigeria, which was one of the reasons EFCC raided his office. Because in an attempt to help him, I think MFLA, under whatever understanding they had, did not give Dangote a dollar at the prevailing rate as at the time he took the money, which means the MFLA and Dangote should change the Nigeria in that particular deal. Do you understand that? But what were the concessions? Nigeria, that's opacity we are talking about. The difference may be in Dangote's books, and who will enjoy it? He may not be Nigerians. He may be MFLA and his family. You see, the country is an active crime scene. Nigeria is a criminal enterprise, a haste. And that is why I said that is the president. The president has to wake up, roll his sleeves, bare his fangs, and insist on transparency, ensure that the books of the NNPC are thrown open for public scrutiny. He has to appoint international auditors to tell us what has happened in NNPC in the last 2 decades.
Certainly, Dr. Mefor. These are things the government, talking about the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, should look into, because issues like this should not have to come up in a country like Nigeria. But let's talk about the previous loan. The $3.8 billion loan was taken by the NNPC from the African Export-Import Bank, Afrex Bank. Let's talk about that loan. That loan has been disbursed. Can we talk about what has been the benefit of this loan? What have they used so far? Because we talk about getting these loans and with our crude oils, the loans we've taken in the past. Let us assess what are the benefits of this. What have we actually used this loan to? Let us see if there are actually any benefits, or we are just chasing shadows here.
Well, you see, I believe you know that debt servicing ratio in our annual budget has climbed to about 77%. What does this tell you? That in our annual budget of 27 trillion, the prevailing budget, that about 20 trillion is going to debt and servicing. You are now left with a balance of about 7 trillion to deal with all your capital and recurrent expenditures. You see where the problem is? So to enable government to survive, because you and I know that even that, if you go to your recurrent expenditure, your 001 is salary, right? Good. The salary of the public officers, appointed, elected, recruited, if you calculate it, I don't have the figures here now, that 7 trillion will not be able to deal with it per annum. It means that the country is actually in red. So how do you run the country without money? That is where this loan thing is coming from. That is why the government is looking for anything taxable. That was the reason President Tinubu removed the oil subsidy without planning for it. Because, to use his own words, Tinubu said, I met an empty well, empty, dry, empty well. There is a well, yes, but no water, nothing. Now, to recharge that well, you need to rely on exports. What are you exporting? Crude. The crude you are exporting, maybe you are entitled to only about 50%. The other 50% is going to your commitments, the loans you took, crude-backed loans and mortgages and other commitments. Now, you will discover that now that you have seen that even your major earner, which is the crude, is not supplying anything, government is looking inwards by introducing all manner of tax. Fuel subsidy is a tax. When you remove fuel subsidy, it means that Nigerians will start paying for what they were not paying before. So it's a form of tax. Now, you go to the energy, electricity, the abracadabra they have done there. They talked about band A, B, C, D, But if you look at some places in Nigeria that have not seen light for days, weeks, some months, to which band do they belong? Band Z? I believe no band at all. So they now, even the little electricity we have, they want to give to only those who can pay them and deprive the rest of the country of electricity, which is illegal, criminal, wicked, evil. But nobody has challenged it in the court. You can't do that. You just cannot do that. That only those who can pay for electricity will enjoy it. It's not done anywhere in the world. This is the first time one can hear that. You are not even saying that you want to prioritize, say, industries. Even at that, putting them on the tariff imposed on Band A, you'll be killing the industries also. You get the point? You'll be killing the industry. And they will pass off the money they are paying you. They will pass off the money they are paying you they will pass it off to the goods and services that they are rolling out. So the whole thing is very, very wrong. So to answer your question, finally, where, the loans we took for what? Well, my brother, part of the loans we took went into paying salaries. That's a fact. When you go to central bank, Muhammad Buhari, as president, went to central bank under NFLA and took 22 trillion naira under what you call ways and means without approval of the National Assembly. What was the money meant for? Overhead, salaries, paying contractors, and so on and so forth. And the money they took from a central bank, that money you see is printed money. The money does not exist in the sense that the money was not backed up by anything. They just printed it. So you can see a country that will print money to pay salary. It's incredible. But that's where we are. You print money to pay salary, and nothing is backing it. It's partly why the country is facing the crisis we're facing. Because you printed money that has no backing. No gold backing, no external reserves backing. Nothing is backing it. Paper. So when you go to your books, they exist in your books. They exist in your books, and you must account for them. And Tinubu came in and followed the same trend. As we speak now, the total loan Nigeria owes as of today has crossed 100 trillion. Rising from a 77 trillion to about 100 trillion in 1 year. So by the time Tinubu stays there for another 3 years, following this whole trend, following the fact that he cannot export more crude, following the fact that even the agricultural sector is grounded. We import almost everything we eat now because our farmers can't go to farm. They can't. Those who tried to go to farm were killed. Those who go to farm, do you know that in places like Zamfara, Niger, Kaduna, and in so many places up north, the farmers are paying each upward of 200 to 300,000 naira to the bandits to enable them enter their farms. During harvest, they have to do the same thing. They have to pay. So a farmer pays maybe about 500,000 naira to farm and harvest. Is he not going to build that in the produce and everything when he's selling it to the end users? So when people say that the tuber of yam is 8,500 naira and the Mefor, these are the reasons. So when some people also, because I hear some government spin doctors, they will tell you that the problem is not availability, it's affordability. That argument flies, in the face of a basic definition of economics. Demand and supply forces are very clear on how these things work. So if you have enough in the supply chain, the prices will certainly come down. That is the way it works. Yeah, it's not magic. It's not rocket science. It's not magic also.
Well, these are big questions you raise. Accountability, corruption. Who is accounting for what? Why are these things happening the way they happen? It's been an interesting conversation this afternoon with Petroleum Mefor, the public affairs analyst and commentator. We've talked about the recent $2 billion loan by the NNPC. He's giving us his insights, and it's been very insightful. Thank you very much for coming in, Dr. Mefor.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for hosting me once more.
And with that, we'll draw the curtain on today's program. And bye-bye. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Have a blessed day.